Hey everyone, welcome to Served. JW with us, producer Mike, Techie Sean here. As always, I just want to run through actual tennis results. Big week for Holger Rune. I think I don't care that Carlos lost at all on the heels of last week's conversation. He is the out and out favorite for me at Roland Garros. Him losing to Holger Rune in the finals of Barcelona doesn't change a thing, win or lose. It does change the way I view Rune's trajectory. I think him winning that tournament is a way bigger deal than Carlos losing it. It doesn't matter about Carlos. I think it's a big, big deal for Rune. The thing that I loved watching Rune is he wasn't in a rush to make something happen. He's fast, he's strong. He was settling in to 25, 30 ball rallies against Casper, against Carlos, and going, come through me, I'm going to be physical with you. That is not a gear that I have seen with Holger Rune before. If he's not playing well, then that normally means he's struggling. This gave him a chance to get into the tournament, and he just kind of like wore people down. He wasn't scared to get into that long 30 ball rally. He wasn't taking a random pot shot on the sixth ball, to try to make something happen. He was using his physicality as gifts. That I thought was amazing. And the craziest stat in tennis, Ostapenko now 6-0 against Iga Swiatek, goes on to win in Stuttgart. Big win for her, beating Aryna Sabalenka in the final. Can you think of any other stat in tennis or even any other sport where it's like Swiatek, best player of our generation so far, has won 5 majors. Ostapenko, major champion. We know what her upside looks like. She also will float backwards to 25 in the world sometimes. 6-0 against Iga Swiatek. Like, talk about matchups, right?
We say this is a sport of matchups, and they're I mean, what was it, like Kevin Anderson and Burdick were like 12-0. I mean, you have these crazy stats, these one-offs, but this one is wild. I don't know how much of this do you think is about sheer tennis and X's and O's and who gets out of corners, and how much of this is about mental block and temperament, and Iga gets put under pressure by this feisty player who in her mind she should be beating. It's a crazy stat though, isn't it?
I'm sure it's weird now, but the first 3 times you're not thinking of like, I can't beat Ostapenko. Like, right. That's not, I mean, now it's getting a little weird, but.
And to her credit, first of all, I saw her quote afterwards, she's a great champion, but so am I. I've won a major too, and then she backs it up by beating the number 1 player and getting the Porsche. So big week for Ostapenko.
Listen, I like character. She can be tough sometimes. She's a lot of times it's full of petulance, and she does something and you kind of roll your eyes. And also, I don't know, I like characters. Like, I kind of like when she's being a curmudgeon. Do I agree with it? No. Are we better because some people smile and some people are pissed and some people are petulant? Yeah, it's an individual sport. Obviously, it's better.
Color over gray any day of the week. We'll take it.
Correct. Anyways, this episode's going to be... we have some that are fluff and funny and it's jokes and we ask questions. This one's going to be a little more serious. Sorribes Tormo basically comes out and says, I'm taking an undecided amount of time away from tennis to address my mental health. Obviously, Naomi Osaka in the past, it's been a lightning rod of a story. Anna Samova now coming back from time taken away. On the other side of this first break, we have one of my best friends on earth, Mardy Fish, who was famously in a Netflix documentary called Breaking Point that covered his struggles with his own mental health journey, which was largely based around anxiety. And it ultimately led to him not being able to take the court for the U.S. Open in a night match against Roger. And then it was a 3-year battle before he could finally make it back to that U.S. Open just to kind of leave on his own terms. But JW, this is kind of a continuing conversation with tennis that it's not one of those things where it was addressed by Naomi and we've kind of forgotten about it. There seems to be some consistency with this to the point where even Carlos Alcaraz, who every week we praise, rightfully so, for, hey, he could be having a bad day and he's still smiling. Right? It feels like he doesn't play as if there's a weight with him, but yet he even acknowledged, hey, there's times where I think, hey, I could take a couple of months away, and really kind of clean things up, refresh. Where are we with this story overall, JW?
It's a really fascinating topic, and I don't have a hot take. I mean, it's interesting. I think it's good that we're discussing this. I think this is all fairly recent. I mean, we talk about sports gambling, we talk about NIL. I would say another real overarching recent trend in sports is this openness about confronting and at some level talking about, admitting, social media posts about mental health challenges. Tennis does seem to have a lot of these incidents. And on the one hand, you could say, boy, there's something really concerning going on here. I mean, I don't have the sort of BuzzFeed list in front of me, but we just rattled these. Amanda Anisimova took time off. Naomi Osaka has been very outspoken. Bianca Andreescu has taken time off to address her mental health. I mean, just keep going down. Garbina Muguruza took a break at one point. We had two different cases. Sara Sorribes Tormo, 28 years old, top 40 player, and had this very poignant post. We also had a player, this is tied to such a Ukrainian player tied to stresses about the war, but you're just suing the WTA for essentially infliction of emotional distress. So this is a topic that really seems to have a lot of currency in tennis. On the one hand, that is on its face concerning. If this is any workforce and this many of the top employees took time off and had complaints and had issues about mental health challenges, that would be concerning. The flip side is, hey, great that they're talking about it. Great that they're doing it, something about it. I'm always a little bit thrown by this. There's one catchphrase that gets me a lot, which is, I'm taking time off to prioritize my mental health. And that's great. But one thing that says to me is that playing tennis is not prioritizing mental health. There is something about playing tennis that's inconsistent with mental health. And I mean, again, I don't have answers.
I think playing tennis,
social media component.
I think playing tennis professionally has, like, I don't think it's just playing tennis in general, right? I don't think that's the PSA.
No. Yeah, exactly. I'm talking about top tier tennis, being a professional tennis player. And there's a social media dimension to this. There is a displacement, right? I mean, what are people are always encouraging routines. I mean, sort of the displacement, the uncertainty of tennis. It doesn't matter how many orchids are in your room service tray when you're sleeping in a strange bed 250 nights a year. That is not aligning with peak mental health. So I don't know how. I mean, it's a fascinating topic. It's something that's really surfaced. We'll talk to Mardy, and sort of he's kind of patient zero. I mean, I think starting with him, there have really been a number of players who have been very admirably outspoken about their challenges. It makes you wonder, prior to Mardy, did this, and I don't have the answers. I mean, for 20, 30, 40 years ago, were just as many players, did we index similarly, and players just didn't have the vocabulary, didn't have the climate where they felt comfortable sending out posts saying, I'm taking indefinite time off? Did other players go through this? Or is there something today about
we
social media?
We had sports psychologists in the 90s, in the 80s, very, very prominent, very famous sports psychologists who were like, don't you even fucking mention the fact that you're feeling something bad. Like, it was the opposite growing up. And it's like, for every person that could overcome it and deal with it, and that made sense, like, you don't treat all your patients the same way. And it was like this lock, stock, lazy, get up, don't even talk about it, chin up, go forward. And I understood why it was an easy rinse and repeat for the people that were trying to profit off of it. But to say this is the way that everyone should process things mentally is fucking psychotic.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, in team sports, this guy was a head case. How many players from 70s, 80s, 90s, even the 10th, that were identified as a head case do we now look at differently and say this isn't just kooky Ron Artest? This is Meta World Peace, who has mental health challenges that need addressing. I mean, I think in sports, it's really the stress of competition is obviously part of this, but I think so is the facade you have to have. And you don't give up any tells, and you don't want to show weakness. And it's really, we'll talk about this with Mardy, I'm sure, but sports are sort of uniquely positioned here. But I do think one trend in tennis is that, and it's mostly WTA players, but not exclusively, the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years, Ash Barty takes time off for mental health reasons, comes back, wins 3 majors, and then still quits before she's 30 years old. Is there something about professional tennis at the highest level that we need to address? Or conversely, and maybe it's not even an either or, is it really admirable that so many athletes today feel free of any stigma and will happily send out an Instagram post saying, here's what I'm dealing with, and I'll see you when I see you?
Yeah, and also, what is the responsibility? Like the response. Okay, so the tours, largely a lot of what they do, and I shit on them for scheduling. I certainly don't agree with everything, but they're like the impossibility of keeping familiar faces in different time zones, different countries over the course of 11 and a half months, training staff on site, food prepared every day, like in languages that they don't understand, where they're trying to figure out the info. It's impossible. Like we equate, well, they run this franchise and it's great. I'm like, you know where half of your home games are. Like tennis is impossible. So if we're going to criticize, we also have to acknowledge the fact that it is brutal, right? And so my thing on tennis is a lot of times what Marty would talk about with like, I don't have an anxiety thing. I run nervous. I have to take care of things. I know that I have to do certain things throughout the day, but I don't have something that would be an anxiety disorder. But also, like hearing Marty talk through it, I still have foods that I don't eat because I equate them with nerves. Like there's this one type of bar, like I will never eat again in my life because I feel like I want to throw up when I eat it, because I used to use that as filler. Like when a match was going on long and I was 15 minutes away from going on the court for like 7 hours, like I would eat that. And now I can't even think about it. All right. And so I think there are different elements, but my question is this isn't going away. I think, and I want to learn more. I want to get smarter. I want us all to get a little bit smarter. I think lived experience is more than just someone's opinion, observing someone's lived experience. But if we have a trainer on site, if we have all of these things in place to help the physical being, are there processes and steps? And is it even possible in this impossible infrastructure of tennis to actually take care of the players? Or is that just on the players? Is it their responsibility? I don't know that I know the answer. But I also don't know that just being able to talk about it is the solution, right? Feeling comfortable talking about it, I don't know if that's a solution, and I don't know where the responsibility lies.
Yeah, I mean, again, I have zero hot takes here. It's just something I've observed, and I think there's no easy answers, right? I mean, for some players, I mean, you've had a triggering situation with an energy bar, and other players have real problems with social media, and other players they don't care about social media. And what Nick Kyrgios cites as sources, his mental health is different from what player X does. And I think some of it is just awareness. I do think social media is a big component here, given the ages of the players. You see how many of them grab their phones after a match, and you see players have screenshotted some of these vile I mean, there's a lot here. And I think some of this is just awareness. Some of this is just letting players know that this is something you may be confronting, and you may not have any issues and symptoms now, but this is something to be aware of going forward. But again, I mean, you talk about trends in tennis and trends in sports in general over the last 10 years. And I would put the sort of candor about mental health challenges certainly on that list. And again, I mean, tennis, you just go through the list, and we've got 4 or 5 recent major champions. Iga Swiatek recently had a post that talked about her anxiety. I mean, it's a thing. I don't think there's an easy source. I don't think, every athlete is experiencing this differently, but I think it never hurts to raise awareness, and we can sort of figure out apportioning responsibility and where the tours fit in another time. But I think it's important to talk about in this week in particular.
I also don't want to be lazy about it, because people, like, I always go back to this Osaka example. She didn't like talking to the media, and it was when she was going through something, that was a thing that she felt like was overwhelming. So like, oh, well, she's not mentally tough. I'm going, okay, well, I never once in my life was stressed out by a press conference. Not a single time. It doesn't worry me. I also am not 4 for 4 in Grand Slam final as far as wins. So it's like if she's not mentally tough, am I mentally tough? I couldn't win another major final. Like,
do you remember the response to that though? All 4 of the majors signed a letter essentially scolding her. And the other thing, the logic was sort of like, if you skip out on a press conference, every player. And you're saying, well, not every player, because not every player faces this anxiety when they're put in this situation. There's got to be a creative solution here.
Yeah,
but I think that's an interesting example though of how tennis did not show great awareness and openness. But it's it's an issue that we need to all confront and talk about.
I'll bring this up with Marty, but there's just not a world where Simone Biles isn't mentally tough, where Michael Phelps isn't mentally tough. They're tougher than all of us mentally, but it's just different things. People act like things that are intimidating to Naomi Osaka. I never thought about things that are, I never could get there again. And she goes 4 for 4 in major finals. Like, you just are good at different things. Like, and I think that's something we need to understand. On the other side of this, my good friend, Mardy Fish, is going to make us all a little bit smarter about the mental tolls of this game of tennis. We'll be right back on Served. Hey everyone, welcome back to Served. Listen, we've had a lot of fun guests on the show. This next guest is someone I'm excited to have on. I know a lot of people, we laugh and joke and it's fun and there's relationships. This person is like a brother to me. I don't think there's a smarter, kind of more understanding voice for the topic of this episode, just mental well-being and the toll that tennis can take on that. Listen, I love him to death, but also, 7 in the world, won a bunch of tournaments, Olympic silver medalist, Davis Cup stalwart for us. My dear friend, Mardy Fish. What's up, Fishy?
Hey guys, thanks for having me.
How's it going?
Finally. I mean, geez. Waiting for the mental health episode.
We didn't want to waste you when we were in build mode, Marty. We had
either the mental health episode, the golf one, or the MMA one, John.
Yeah.
Steph Curry seatmate worked as well.
That was not.
I thought we were having.
We don't need to talk about that. I'm full diet, rock bottom. I do not look like Luka Doncic.
Yeah. So for those who don't know and weren't anywhere near their phones last week, there are those moments in time where tennis people will text about episodes, and the real nerds of our show will text about things. When I start getting texts from people about tennis people that I know don't listen to the show or don't watch tennis regularly, I got more texts about a tweet that was basically, someone wrote, Steph Curry spotted hanging out with Luka Doncic, and it was actually Steph Curry hanging out with Mardy Fish. And Marty, what was your response? You quote tweeted it was fantastic.
I think I said, yeah, that's not Luka, and I'm going on a diet immediately. They also said it was like Sunday after the game. I actually went to the game last Sunday in San Francisco. That was like 3 weeks prior in LA, where we went. Bennett Rosenthal owns the LAFC soccer team out here, and Messi was playing. And Steph just happened to be in town. We played golf that day, and I was like, dude, you want to go watch Messi? I've never seen him play. And he's like, hell yeah, I do. And so we ended up going to the game. That was like 4 weeks ago.
So I'm stunned because I can't believe the media misrepresented something. And 2, how has your transition been to the Lakers? How do you like playing with LeBron?
I miss Dallas, man. Oh, God, I miss Dallas. No.
Defense wins championships, man.
Defense wins championships, and we saw game 1, my T-Wolves. That was beatdown. Oof. So, maybe it does win championships. I don't know.
Well, I guess we'll see. So, for those who haven't seen the documentary Breaking Point on Netflix, for my money, and I'm probably biased and I'm probably too close to it, one of the best sports documentaries I've ever seen. I think it's for a number of reasons, and I don't know that we've discussed it at length. For context, I assume most of the audience has watched it because we're tennis people. If not, go watch it. I thought you were so good, Marty, and I normally don't say nice things to your face, only behind your back. But I think you were so good because my version of this thing and how it went together was you texted me and said, hey, can you do this thing for these dudes that are doing, this thing? And I said, yeah, I mean, I don't care. If you want me to do it, I'll do it. If you don't care, then I don't, whatever. Anyways, so these 2 kids, they were like 26 or 27. McLean and I forget his brother's
Mac
name.
and Chap Way, yeah, the way.
Yeah, they're unbelievable, by the way. But they came and we sat, and we obviously went to high school together, and I guess I had a close-ish view of this moment in time in your life, and we talked for an hour and a half, and it goes away. I don't hear about it again for 3 years until Brooke and I's assistant Paul says, "Hey, I just watched the Mardy thing. The Untold just came out, and it was amazing." I said, "Okay, well, thanks for the heads up, Mardy. I didn't even know it was a Netflix thing, much less that these guys had actually made it happen." I thought it was so raw. I think personally that the fact that you did it, maybe not knowing if it would ever get actually made or if anyone would actually see it, added a layer of authenticity. It wasn't as if you told your story and your relationship with the kind of the mental health challenges of tennis because it was going to be on Netflix. It was more just that it was something that was important to you, that you wanted to share. And it was kind of in a moment in time that was before it was normal to talk about it, right? Like, it wasn't as if, it was something that, was openly discussed, certainly not when we were on tour. Walk us through the process and kind of just explain for those 3 people listening that haven't seen the documentary, why you did it, quick version of how you talked about it, why you talked about it, and kind of what happened in the after effects of that documentary.
Yeah. So, obviously it's a topic near and dear to me, changed my life in many ways. So this all happened mid to late 2012. I wrote a piece in the Players Tribune, and when I say I wrote, I had a ghostwriter, because I'm not a writer or a reader, and so we sort of sat down and we sat down. It was the longest interview I'd ever done, like in my career, my life, whatever. Usually they last, you get someone like John and you do a 15 to 45 minute sort of thing. I mean, I talked to this guy for 5 hours straight, about like what I had gone through. This is now fast forward to 2015. My last tournament was the US Open. For a lot of different reasons, I wanted to get back to that place, because it was the place that sort of took it all away from me, and B, B, C, D, whatever, the rankings and timing and life, and had a kid and married, all that stuff, right? So it was actually an okay time, to sort of stop. Everything sort of came into place. So we wrote a piece in the Players Tribune about my, sort of struggles with mental health, struggles with anxiety, specifically severe anxiety, and how I got to the other side of it, how I got to get back to the U.S. Open, throw myself back into the fire, et cetera, et cetera. Fast forward then a couple years later, and Netflix and Players Tribune sort of partnered, and they wanted to do five episodes. They wanted to make 5 episodes off of stories from the Players Tribune, and mine was one of them. And you're kind of, like, that doesn't happen every day. You're sort of blown away. They want to do sort of you've obviously heard of Netflix, and you're like, wow, a huge platform. And at that time, I was so comfortable. I had gotten so comfortable with telling my story that there were 2 things. I wanted to be a success story because I loved sports. So, as growing up with me, like, or us together, like I was really just sports. Like, I didn't really have a lot of, I wasn't into, the real estate market or finance or like, any other thing. I was just sports. I just loved sport. I was an athlete. I wanted to, if it wasn't going to be tennis, it was going to be golf. If it wasn't golf, it was going to be baseball, whatever it was, I was going to do something in sports. And, when I was going through this, I didn't have like a role model or a success story to lean on and go, okay, there's someone that really struggled. Their life was thrown upside down. Their career and their job was thrown upside down, and they got through it jumped back into the fire and got back in there and competed at the highest level. So I wanted to be a success story for someone, one person, right? Like not like 10,000 people or 10 million people, like literally just like if I could help one person share my story, that would have been great. The second one was educating folks on mental health, like educating people on like um, what the signs are, what it feels like when you're in it. You know, not necessarily even for people that would have to deal with it, but maybe loved ones that would have to deal with it, and how to sort of manage it in that way, because it's a really hard thing. You don't know, mental health, and they say it's mental. It feels fairly physical. Your serotonin levels in your brain are messed up, and it feels like a physical thing, and you're not, it's not like you're limping. It's not like you're like, oh, I can see Andy's ankle is hurting because he's limping, right? Like it's one of those things where like everyone is dealing with something, be kind, right? Like the great quote from Robin Williams about everyone's dealing with something severe, be kind, sort of quote. And so I wanted to educate, like I had this sort of like, person in mind. It was like kind of a, hardcore 50-year-old white guy that like is just like thinks he's the toughest dude on the planet, right? Like that doesn't bother me. Like suck it up and like, move on kind of thing. And mental health doesn't care what you do for a living, doesn't care what your last name is, what your first name is, or anything. You can struggle with it, and anyone can struggle with it. And so just educating folks on like what the signs are, what it feels like, et cetera, was a huge part. So those two things were a huge part of it. You were a huge part of, and I say this because I still haven't watched, I think you know this, but I still haven't watched the documentary. It's first of all, I can't stand the sound of my own voice. It's like nails on a chalkboard.
It is
And then also,
it is pretty stupid sounding. I got if I'm being
yeah,
honest.
so is yours. So
Okay.
don't worry. And so, and then the other part was like it's a really hard time in my life to relive, and so I just never really pulled myself. I started it like 12 times, like the first 2 minutes, and Kevin O'Connor comes up or whatever, and I just kind of like, I don't know, I just sort of change it or turn it off or whatever, and I just can't really get through it. And so I haven't actually seen it. Right when it came out, it was an overwhelmingly positive response. Overwhelmingly positive from you. I mean, look, they asked a few people other than you. Mac and Chap Way were the guys that did it, sort of wrote it and directed it, and kind of put it together, found all the footage and all the stuff on the side. They're phenomenal. They've been nominated for Emmys and stuff with other documentaries, and just phenomenal guys. There were also two things that, like, if I was going to do this, I wanted to make sure that the people that were going to do it, I wanted to make sure they understood tennis, like, because like tennis is a really hard sport. I mean, I think it's the hardest sport in the world. Obviously, I'm biased. I play a lot of other sports. I can argue all day long. A lot of people put golf and tennis together because they're in individual sports or whatever, and I just immediately go to the physical side of it, right? So like tennis, knowing and understanding professional tennis and tennis, junior tennis stuff was super important, and then just as important, or probably more, was a history of mental health, something, right? Like whether it was them, whether it was family, friends, whatever, loved ones. Those two things were super important. Both of those guys tick those boxes, and they came out with an incredible doc. So I hear, and the response was incredibly overwhelming, all the way from people that you and I have heard of to just total strangers. And it was not like tens or hundreds of them; it was like thousands of them, like immediately. Whether it was like direct messages on social media stuff or whatever, it was just saying. And I never got, and this is rare in the Twitter world or whatever nowadays, but like I never got any negative, like, oh, you're soft, or like I never got that. It was and that's kind of a weird thing too, right? Like nowadays it's just like whatever you do, somebody's going to oppose it, right? I never got that. I always got a thank you for sharing your story. It's an incredible. I'm proud to be your friend. You know, that kind of stuff. And I'm like, I don't. Okay, you know, I'm proud to be your friend too, dude. But like, I didn't see it, so I don't know what it means. But like, you know, and so it was awesome to know right away that like when it came out that I was helpful to people. And that was the goal. And that was the goal. And there were again a couple caveats, but that was the goal was to be a success story and to be an educator on mental health.
So I'll tell you what my orbit felt like just in the kind of like undertow of this doc, and you haven't watched it. I would, you know, our we've known each other long enough where we can just rip the Band-Aid off of most conversations. It's phenomenal. I had more people that didn't really care about tennis, maybe understood it a little, and all of a sudden they left that going, oh, I'm way smarter on this. It didn't, there was no part of it that was like you were telling a story for the sake of a story. It was purely your story, and people are either going to accept it or they weren't. But I had more people. It was happening. I can't imagine what your reality was after it came out, because even mine and people just knowing that we're close and we knew each other 3 times a week, it was, hey, my 12-year-old, my 13-year-old son or daughter really struggles with anxiety and plays sports. And to your point, Marty, they would say, oh, they watched this and realized, oh, this person has beaten Federer and Nadal and like all these people, you know, medalists at the Olympics, and they're experiencing the same things and they were actually able to go through, you know, something that was, you know, the depths of this thing happening, and then actually come back and, you know, get there again in 2015. So if your goal was to just make someone understand your story or help one person, you know, normally a multiple of millions is good in most things. And I'm pretty sure that's where you ended up with it. I hope that at some point in your life, when you're ready, you watch it, because I really do think that you would swell with pride for yourself. And I think this story is one that even when someone watches it 10 or 15 years from now, this isn't something that is like a vaccine's going to come out, right? This is something that is real life, and people are gonna have to deal with over and over. So
yeah, and just one caveat too, just to cut you off, just so everyone knows as well. And I'll obviously never forget this, but when you found out that I hadn't watched it yet, I remember you texting my wife and saying, I'll fly out and watch it with him. Like I'll legitimately fly out and watch it with him. So like that's how close we are. And yeah, like I hope I get to the point where like I can watch it with my son, right? Like I can watch it with Beckett and like show him what like perseverance is, show him what struggle is, and show him what you know, never quitting and never giving up. He's a pretty sporty kid and he loves all the sports and he plays all of them and everything. And he'll want to do something like that one, you know, in his life. He's 11, but like, yeah, I want to get to that point where, and I know that, you know, there's kids who have watched it where my buddy's kids who are 10 and 9 and 8 and whatever, and they watch it already. I just haven't, I don't know. We haven't like embraced, I don't know how you are with Hank, but like, I haven't embraced like this is what dad used to do. Let's watch it and like, let's see or whatever. So like, maybe that's a good entree for it.
Yeah, Hank didn't know that I played tennis until he went to kindergarten, and then he said, "Oh, you're a pro tennis player." I said, "Well, yeah." He goes, "Where do you teach?" I'm like, "Well, not that one. Not like that." And then he asked more questions, and it went from, he's like, "Oh, you're the best player ever." I'm like, "Okay, so we're going to need like a dose of reality on both sides. I'm not a teaching pro, and I'm far from the second thing."
Somewhere in between those two, though, it was pretty nice. Yeah, it was
so
pretty good. And did he ask like, where are all these vases from? Like all these like crystal, like what are all these things?
Those guys.
Man, you love flowers.
Yeah, in my own fit, I threw all of them out like 2 years after I retired. So there's none of those around.
Except for the U.S. Open one, right?
That one's still there, but tucked in. JW, you got something?
I mean, I don't know where to begin here. First of all, I do think we should point out the Way brothers were friends of Sam Querrey growing up. And I bring that up not as trivia, but I think really informed this film at some level. They weren't starting from scratch. They knew you. They knew what it took. But they I think were one of those samurais that actually were on the tour sometimes. So they knew a bit about tennis. When you are ready,
they were in the crowd. I played Sam 2007 LA in at UCLA there, and they were in the crowd as like, yeah, the samurais, like they, the Sam samurais, and they'd paint their chest or whatever. That didn't go well for Sam, but or them at that that day. But yeah, that was kind of, so that was an important part of it too, was that. And then again, like lastly, I didn't mention like Netflix comes, and Netflix is like, at the time there's not very many streamers. It was like pretty much only Netflix. It's like, wow, what an amazing, if you're gonna do that, if you're gonna truly like do this, what a cool platform to like, everyone can see it. Everyone goes on Netflix and blah, blah, blah. So that was, back in like 2018, when it comes out. Now there's a billion of them, but yeah, great platform to do it on as well.
let me ask you a question about stigma. I think it's really interesting what you said, that you did not have this, I hate the word role model, but you did not have someone that you could look to in professional sports that had gone through this. And now, in the last 5 years, it's name me a sport, and you'll find athletes who have been very outspoken about their challenges. I'm curious though, when you had the match against Roger at the U.S. Open, which was figured prominently in the film, spoiler alert, but I think that also was a big part of your Players Tribune piece. That was pretty far on in your career, and for people that covered the sport, they knew you were, lived with the Roddicks when you were in Fort Lauderdale, and they knew about Minnesota, and they knew about your golf game. They knew so much about you, but you had this fundamental part of your existence, of who you are, that you didn't talk about, and that people were surprised when they learned about it. I'm curious what the burden was, and also what the exercise was of I don't know if stigma is, if I'm inferring something, if there was a fear, but sort of what was the experience like of having this fundamental part of your personality that you sort of chose not to talk about?
It was unknown. I mean, it was truly unknown. For my first few thoughts of having, pretty severe anxiety and not knowing what it was around Wimbledon. Again, 2012, I had taken off the French Open at that year. Because A, I stink on clay, and B, I had a heart issue called tachycardia that I needed an ablation for. And so I scheduled that one right around the clay season, which was smart for me in my ranking. And so I did it around there. Went and just played Wimbledon. Was my only, grass was my best surface. Outside of like the, Andy, obviously, and then, the guys that sort of won the Wimbledons and stuff like that, I felt like I was one of the better grass court players. And so I didn't want to miss that one. And, missing Queens and, those types of tournaments were hard, but it was sort of the unknown was still far, sort of far away, or knowing what was going on was sort of far away. And it got a little bit more and more until obviously New York, that summer. But I had gone through and asked a few people, my father, Andy, you remember Tom Barnes, who recently passed away, and he had an ablation as well. And I kind of thought that like my dad had a heart issue where he needed a pacemaker to be put in and stuff. So like scary things happening with your heart, right? And I would ask them, and I go, "Do you guys like ever get these kind of thoughts or feelings or whatever?" No, not really. I feel pretty good, So it was like, kind of the fear of the unknown, of like, what the hell is going on? This doesn't feel normal. I can't really take a deep breath. I can't catch my breath. I can't like, why is my mind 4 days away, and I'm living and not living in the moment, or like, I remember I played there was a turn that year was Toronto instead of Montreal, and it was in Toronto, and I was all the time, like Mark Knowles was my coach at the time. I was playing well. That was the other problem, was like I made the quarters of Miami, which was a good result for me. I made the fourth round of Wimbledon. I made the quarters of Toronto and Cincinnati, and like, or maybe even semis of Toronto. And I remember having to like I was so fit at the time, and I tried and worked so hard on my fitness, and I had to play two matches in one day because of the rain and weather in Canada. And I was like so nervous about playing like two matches. And I was like so worried about the second match, like before even starting the first match. And it was like, it just didn't make sense. I just never had those types of thoughts. And ended up like getting through like some of it, right? And like, losing to good players and lost to Gasquet, who almost won that tournament in Toronto. I think I lost to Roger in the quarters of Cincinnati, and then obviously had to, or had to play him again in the fourth round. So like it wasn't like I was like first or second round. Like I was having like pretty good results as well. And having someone, there's a lot of things that sort of come together, I feel like, that equate to what happened. Jumping Andy in the US rankings, at the time felt like a big deal because he had sort of handled, not sort of, he had handled the brunt of the American tennis media, or just tennis media in general, as being the alpha male of our generation, being one of the best players in the world, being a first ballot Hall of Famer. And then, you're you're ranked at, you all of a sudden you're like ranked ahead of him, and then it's like it doesn't like compute, it doesn't make sense. It's like, okay, everyone is watching, as opposed to like, everyone's watching Andy, like it's fine, like I don't have to worry about it. Like he always had to take that sort of negative press and stress, and dealt with it incredibly well. But I was new to that, so like that added a lot of extra sort of stress and expectation and stuff like that. And the weight loss and like changing, having, um, going on my diet and kind of getting my fitness back, and understanding like the discipline and dedication and professionalism it took to like get everything. So understanding what Andy understood at 18, understanding it at 29, but figuring it out, thank God. But doing it, at a later, slower pace. All these things kind of contributed to I think in eventually getting to that sort of rock bottom, which was in New York at the US Open, when you're thinking like, man, how am I going to take the court here? And the only solace, the only place that I could feel comfortable or didn't have those thoughts was on the tennis court. And once that third round night match against Jill Simone, um, where I got a full blown like sort of panic and anxiety attack in the match, was completely taken away from me. And once that was gone, there was nowhere for me to hide. And I didn't know what I was going to do. And I was done. And there's good, super deep on, post that, and trying to figure out how to get my life back in order, and how to get off the couch, or how to go to the doctor, or go to a movie, or just get my life back, was daunting and difficult, and took a long time.
Talk about the trade-off, Marty, because it's so weird, because I'm sitting here going like, Gilles Simon is such a pain in the ass to get through anytime, anywhere. He's one of those guys who's just, you may beat him, but he's going to make you beat him. Under the lights in New York, explain how like the offset to someone who's a dummy and like cynical. How do you get through a guy who's one of the 15 best tennis players on earth at a given time, while having had I don't know, I guess panic attack during the match? And then, so you're able to do these like superhuman things that you're talking about, making quarters of tournaments, having, the most consistent results over a 2-year period of your life, and this being the second year of that, to then, not taking the court against Roger, but then talk through like what parts of life became difficult, and what the offset is, and how confusing it has to be to like, okay, I know I'm capable of this, to being one of the best tennis players on earth while dealing with it. And also I have to relearn these like simple things and like life's little victories, kind of in the fallout of that match not taking place against Roger.
Yeah, and it was, as we're not trained to quit, right? Like we're not trained to um not take the court. Like it wasn't in my it wasn't in my vocabulary. Like I just didn't, I never, if Stacy wasn't in, if she wasn't in the car driving to the tennis center that day and saying, you don't have to play. Like it never would have crossed my
It's
mind
such an
because
obvious thing, and it's such a weird thing
yeah,
also, right?
yeah. It's just like, oh, and it would cross our mind if like we had an injury, right? I'd be like, let's weigh the pros and cons here. Can I get through this? How much damage am I going to do? Whatever. And this was like an injury that no one could see. And it's funny too, like looking back, because I pulled out, I didn't go back to the US Open 2012, 2013, or 2014. And 2013, I had to give a reason. You got to pull out. You got to give a reason. And I think I went back and it was like, a knee injury or something. My knee is bothering me, so I'm going, whatever. And it was like I look back on like I think it was like there's like a Twitter post that I put that was like, I'm, sorry I can't get, make the US Open, one of my favorite tournaments, blah blah blah. My knee's too bad, and like, and I sort of think back to a lot of times where there's a lot of players who were off the tour for like a couple months or a year or something like that, and you're like, and I would sort of go back and think like, man, Rafa took a lot of time off, or I remember like Jurgen Melzer like took a lot of time off, like at one stage. Leighton Hewitt took a lot of time off, like at one stage. Andy Murray took a lot. I wonder if like I know they're saying that it's an injury or something like that, but I wonder how much of that is mental or how much of that is mental health. And I'm sure that one of those names that I mentioned had some, issues with it. When I did come out with it, with the story, I can't tell you how many tennis players reached out to me, female, male. I've had numerous conversations with tons of just athletes that like all different sports, team sports, individual sports, whatever, actors, like actresses that like I've heard of that I would never cross paths with otherwise without this story that have become friends because of our battles with mental health. And
So keep going with that. I mean, do you think tennis over indexes, or do you think we're at an evolved point and we have a vocabulary and we're able to identify symptoms, and every industry, whether it's Hollywood stars or whether it's the Butchers Guild, a certain percentage of the workers are going to have some of these challenges? Do you think there's something specific to tennis, or do you think this is just another workforce where X% of the population is going to struggle with this?
it's not specific to tennis. I mean, I think tennis is a brutally hard sport to play. One of the only the ones where you leave the locker room and you're all by yourself and you got to figure it out. And I hate the coaching part of tennis. I don't know where y'all stand, but like I hate the coaching part of it because I love the fact that we leave the locker room and you just mono. It's like a non-contact gladiator sport. It's one-on-one. I got to beat you, and I got to do anything possible to do that. Um, but like, yeah, I think we're still in the leather helmet phase of like, mental health, like learning mental health, learning how to diagnose, how to treat, how to educate, et cetera, et cetera. And like there are, Michael Phelps and I talk a lot personally just about just checking in, just like, hey man, how are you? How you doing? We're very similar in that like we both have sort of found our happy place or like comfort zone, if you will, with a little bit of travel, but not a ton. Exercise. Like I'm the type of person that I have to get sun or try and get sun every day, and I have to sweat every day. Whether it's like a bluff workout that like makes no sense and it's just hot out and I'm gonna sweat, or I go into the steam room, right? Like just to sweat, like just my body sweating and the feeling of like doing something to your body like helps me. He's the same way in that regard. So like there is sort of a small community where you sort of reach out to each other and just kind of go, hey bro, how you doing? How you feeling? And everything good with the kids, and just you just sort of keep in touch. And so I do think that I still think we can come a we've come incredibly far, and we can go way further. Uh, People much smarter than me have to, kind of figure out like the sort of the how to, because if you break it down, you can medicate for a lot of stuff, right? You just sort of throw a Band-Aid on it, medicate, and I don't know where I would be. I'm pretty sure like if I didn't have the support system that I had, and if I didn't have like the medication just to kind of just get me out of that like horrible rock bottom sort of like I don't want to be here sort of mindset, or I'm okay not being here set type mindset or existing mindset. Like, I don't know where I'd be. Like, I certainly, if I didn't have my wife and like support system, right? Like, if you didn't have your family or like my parents, obviously, my dad would like fly out, just like watch football games with me just to like kind of get through that, have some part of some sort of normalcy. And here I'm like 31 years old at the time, by the way. Like I'm not like a little kid, where I need my dad to like fly out. But in the moment I am. I need my dad to fly out so we can like hang out and I can take my mind off of it. Um, I don't know. Yeah, like I don't know where it goes in terms of like diagnosing. I don't know, because I'm sure there are people out there where it's like, I'm so stressed, I've got mental health issues or whatever. And it's like you don't want a stress-free, anxiety-free life. You would never get out of bed in the morning. You just like, what's my motivation? You need anxiousness. Like we got nervous before we played tennis and played a big match or whatever, or Davis Cups. Like I could barely eat, right? Like I can put food down. But that's like a healthy like stress, right? It's like excited stress. It was like where you go too far, you have too many things going on. You've got and then on top of it, the expectation you put on yourself, et cetera, et cetera. So like everyone's bubble and everyone's world is unique in their own. And it doesn't mean that like because I was in the spotlight, if you will, in that moment, or when I was going through mine and someone else isn't, that mine's tougher than theirs. Everyone's trying to sacrifice for their families. Everyone's trying to put food on the table. Everyone's trying to advance in life, right? And get better at things. And it doesn't matter who you are, what you do for a living. Everyone has those stresses, and when they get too far, that's where you get in trouble. And I don't know. I mean, it's a hard anxiety, John, is like a really hard thing to articulate. Like I don't have the vocabulary to like articulate what anxiety kind of feels like, right? It's like, why is my mind way down there? Or why is the pit of my stomach just like closing in on me? And why, like it's hard to describe, unless you have, so that is part of it too. And then a lot of people don't want to talk about it. A lot of people aren't comfortable talking about it. I got to a point where I could tell that where I was very comfortable talking about it, and then also felt like I could make a difference. And like I know that my first part of my life will always be about tennis, but my second part of my life doesn't necessarily have to be about tennis. I don't do very much in tennis at all anymore. It's like one of those things where I played my first tournament at 6. I was playing tennis at 2. Um, I played on tour. I played Davis Cup. I was a Davis Cup captain. I tried commentary. I haven't tried a podcast yet. Tried
You
commentary.
should.
Tried.
It's super easy. You should definitely get into
I was
it.
gonna say, but you're
Um,
missing.
On our channel.
and then I tried the coaching thing. I really enjoyed like coaching. So, like, there's really not, and there's not that many other things to do, and it doesn't. So you don't see me that much in tennis. I love golf. As you know, John, I love mixed martial arts. Like, I love learning about finance. I love learning about valuing companies and things like. It's just there's so many other things in the world that I'm interested in and tennis is kind of like it's run its course with me. And so I'm just kind of,
Is
I
there
don't do much
is
with
there
it
any part
anymore.
of you that attaches the kind of not being into tennis and or I don't want to speak for you, but and or that interested in on a day-to-day basis? Is there any part of that sits with it being a burden at certain points in your life, or maybe this thing that is, if it didn't cause, anxiety, at least added many elements to it? Is there anything that's sort of like, I need my space from this thing that I associate with certain feelings?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't think so, but maybe, there's some underlying thing that I don't know about. I did lie and say I haven't tried the doubles thing. I've seen the doubles draws recently, and I'm thinking like, maybe come back and play doubles
I can't
only.
say anything about doubles without getting in trouble. So
I mean, I've seen that. I don't give it. Can you cuss on this, by the way?
you can say anything. Yeah, go for it.
I don't give a damn. It's not
Oh,
really a
damn.
bad
Yeah.
word.
We've never had the word damn before.
Yeah,
Well, I
that's
was gonna say
Minnesota
fuck,
talk.
but then,
Yeah, well, you can say
uh,
it's beautiful. There's a whole world out here. You can say whatever you want. It's beautiful.
Um, yeah, no, I don't. A lot of my where I am, look, a lot of where I am in life, right? Like being able to, I play these really fun celebrity golf tournaments, and my year sort of revolves around the American Century in Tahoe. It's such a fun event, and I get to meet really awesome people that I would never cross paths with, right? And
And
the
you
only
and you've
time
I'll say it because you won't, and you've won it. Like
I've
And
won
for
it a
those
couple
listeners,
times,
like Marty's like a
I'm not playing
Marty's
like
a plus
pro
6, by the way. Just he's like,
players.
it's ridiculous. Jack Nicklaus
I'm
called
not
him the
plus
best.
six. Don't say that. People are going to listen to that and then go, "Hey, I'm a scratch. I'm getting six off of
Good.
you. I'm not a plus six."
Good.
Don't.
That's not my. That sounds like fucking you. It sounds like a math problem, not really anything else. Jack Nicklaus called him the best amateur
It's a
golfer he's
plus
ever played
four.
with. By the
Okay,
way,
it's not a plus six. But yeah, it's like trying to trying to figure out where where I want to go with my life, what I want to try and accomplish. Yeah, and like mental health is a huge. I'll say this one thing, like with my psychiatrist that I met like right away in 2012, right after the U.S. Open. He's been a huge help for me throughout the years, and I still talk to him all the time. I said, I just can't wait for this stuff to get behind me. Like, I just want to go have a beer on the golf course with my friends and just get back my life back, because I couldn't even do that. Like, I couldn't even go play golf. Like, I couldn't leave my house or whatever. He said, Marty, this will always be a part of your life. It'll never just go away. And I don't mean that where it's like, oh, anxiety will be a part of your life. You'll have this skill set and these tools to be able to either help others or help yourself or help loved ones when they're in those types of moments, be able to pop out of them. And whether it's friends, kids, and or friends or people, again, people I've never met before. There's a timeline and a story there and a documentary, I guess, if you will, where it's like, okay, this will always be there for you. I recently played golf with Ryan Leaf, who's a super interesting guy and a really, man, a crazy life story, right? Football and then jail and then now turning his life around. And I mean, he came to me. He's like, dude, hopefully I don't think I'd be ruining his confidence at all. But like, I've watched your thing. Like every time I don't feel well or something, I just turn on your documentary and I watched it like 17 times or whatever. And it's just like, that's fucking cool, man. Like I've met him one time. We played golf. We enjoyed it. He's a great golfer. I know of him, kind of know his story a little bit. He's got a documentary that's coming out pretty soon as well. We definitely check that out 'cause that'll be fascinating. Some of his stories in the slammer will be interesting, but but that's what I call jail, the slammer. But yeah, I mean, look, even helping people like that, helping people that you know of and stuff. It's
yeah.
kind of weird.
Talk to
Kinda weird.
we've talked about John and I have talked about some stuff on air. Obviously, Osaka has been very public with coming back and, you know, dealing with things. And then I get so pissed when I see some jackass on TV, you know, boiling the ocean with knowledge, pretending to know about everything, but saying like Simone Biles dealing with something and saying she's not mentally tough, and then saying Michael Phelps isn't mentally tough. Like, what in the actual fuck is wrong with people to where you don't equate someone's mental health journey with mental toughness? And from where I sit, that seems to be, and it's changing. But if you rewind back to 2012 and going through, you know, in real time, the biggest disconnect with the way that people digested, you know, any sort of mental issue was whether it's anxiety or whether it's, you know, freaking out during a match. Like there's just not a world where someone can be the most decorated Olympian of all time and be soft mentally. It's not as if like, and I just would lose my mind. Do you find points of anger with the ignorance of some people and how they digest this thing where they just work backwards from, you know, an answer and then kind of try to retrofit reality?
Yes, but that's the education side for me. That's the side that I actually get excited to like try and educate those types of people, because that's that like person, that's that like 50-year-old dude that's like thinks he's like, you know, still got his Letterman's jacket on from high school, you know, that's like that guy. It's the guy, yeah, that's like, so you're telling me that Simone Biles has spent the last 4 years of her life training for this one specific event. And by the way, it's an incredible, it's incredible toughness to actually come out in Simone Biles and say, when the world is watching her, and say, I can't do this right now. I mentally can't do this. And it's not, and then to think like, as you and I understand like the depths of how far you have to go physically and mentally and, you know, whatever, emotionally, to train to get to that sort of part of your life or part of your career, and you're like, you know what? Imagine thinking like, oh yeah, I'm just a little nervous. I don't want to do this. No. Like she's won like 8 gold medals already. It makes no sense.
As if that's the first time that Simone Biles has had to deal with it. Like obviously she knows how to. It's just she couldn't.
The other part of it, Andy, is, and I don't think I know John is into like martial art and boxing and combat sports and things. And we talk about it on the side a lot. And like, I thought it was huge that like Tyson Fury comes out and says he was suicidal. He had, you know, strong mental health issues, big mental health issues. There was a guy recently that actually just retired, the Tarantula, you know him, John, that, what was his name though? Jalen Green, no, anyways, Jalen Turner. So Jalen Turner just retired. He was a 170-pound fighter. He was an unbelievable mixed martial artist, Andy, like a walk, like one of the most scariest dudes out walking the planet, right? He just retired because of his mental health. Like, he's like, I can't do this anymore. I got to take care of myself and whatever. And you see like Max Crosby, who plays defensive end for the Las Vegas Raiders. Like, you're telling me that dude ain't tough? Like, really? You want to tell him that he's not tough? And he's come out and talked about depression and suicidal thoughts and things like that. It's massive for, you know, because like I can see Naomi, you know, people talking about Naomi and going, oh, she just doesn't want to do press for the French Open. It was like, wait a minute, she was going for she's a historian of the game. She was going for her third straight slam. She's number 1 in the world. She's in the middle of the French, you know, kind of like early, I guess, third round of the French Open, and she pulled out because like of her mental health, and people thought it was just because like, oh, she didn't want to talk to the press. It's like it's crazy. And so yes, but to answer your question, dude, like I get motivated to like try and talk to those people or like try and like say I'd love to have an open forum just to sit down and talk with, some of the guys that I don't even want to like say names because pretty much who they are. It's like I don't wish this on you, but I kind of wish that you'd spend 24 hours to like see what this feels like, to understand and whatever. And I'm, again, like I'm not the toughest guy in the world, but martial arts for me, John, has like changed my life in terms of pain tolerance, in terms of like technique and like understanding and just falling in love with something that like not a lot of people know or understand. And the self-confidence and stuff like that. It's just such an awesome like thing. And it's that has changed my life as well.
Do you view that as a form of therapy, Marty?
100%, 100%. Because A, I'm getting this like insane workout, right? And then B, I'm getting this self-confidence and not self-confidence where like I'm walking around like with my shoulders back going like I'm ready to fight anyone on the planet. It's like the self-confidence of
But that happens, right?
oh, all the time.
Yeah.
But every room I walk in. But no, it's the room that you walk in where you're like, I'm gonna walk in with there's 1,000 people in here. I'm going by myself and I'm gonna walk with my shoulders back because I'm confident in myself. And I highly recommend picking up a martial art. Again, I know John, you're into it, and I know you do a lot of the combat sports stuff for work. And it's it I can't recommend some sort of craft in martial arts enough to where you're just understanding that you can walk into any room at any time with your shoulders back and get through it and beat it. And it is therapy because it's like I've never had as much self-confidence as I have when I've started mixed martial arts. And I started 7 years ago and I'll never quit. I'll never stop. It's changed my life.
Even in MMA, right? I mean, even the alphas of the alphas, the toughest guys are the toughest guys. Even in that sport now, there have been instances where fighters have had anxiety attacks and said, "Listen, I'm not prepared to leave the locker room. I'm not prepared to go out there." We've come a long way in 2012 since did 13 years. We've come a long way in sports, but you also mentioned that there's still room for understanding. There's still a disconnect. We hear some the people calling Simone Biles soft. Where do you think sports needs to go to catch up with the rest of society on understanding and having empathy for mental health?
I actually think sports may be ahead of ahead of society in that regard. Because I think a lot of people look at athletes and they're like, you sort of an overinflated idea of what like an athlete is and what what we do, and we're just good at a sport or super athletic or whatever it is to get to the 0.01% of the population that wants to do it. And I honestly think that like in sports they've done a pretty good job or pretty comfortable job of letting people come out now. Team sports, individual sports. You mentioned UFC fighters. Kevin Love was a huge proponent. He came out and those guys are tough, like they're really tough. I don't know where I don't know where we go in terms of like how to diagnose it. I think because there is a fine line between like, man, I am really struggling here and I need help, as opposed to like, and kind of see it in kids too, as opposed to like this there's something wrong or I feel stressed today. I think there are obviously a lot of great helpful kind of apps out there, kind of things. I think under just having people like the education of having people understand that the most important things are being vulnerable with loved ones, having a support system, and then somehow figuring out a way to either whether it's medication. For me, it was medication, but like to try and develop the tools to like trick your mind to go into different places or get your mind out of a bad place. And it's a lonely thing because again, like you sort of feel like, well, no one can see it and I'm not limping around, or you can't see that I have a broken arm. It's in my mind or it's in my brain. And so it's really hard to, it's just so hard to understand how bad it is. And you see it like we've got, Andy and I have kids. We basically did everything like 1 year later. Like I turned pro and then he turned pro 1 year later. And then I got married and he got married 1 year later. And I had two kids, like they're 11 and 8. His are 10 and 8 or 11 or 10 and 7 or whatever, like we're very close. So like we have this, like I know that my son, how do you have those conversations with your kids where it's like, how do you know how much to push and how much to pull back? And you want to be empathetic, um, but you also want to be tough, right? You want to develop those skills to like, hey, this is not going well. You can't just stop. Or hey, you don't like your coach. You can't just not do it because you don't like your coach. Like, and that's, sort of a tricky part as a father as well, is to kind of get or parents to get like everything out of your kids, but making sure that they're not going too far. And today's society obviously has a lot to do with, I think has a lot to do with like electronics, obviously social media, stuff like that. But like a couple months ago, I had a really bad sort of bout with my anxiety, and like it came, every once in a while it kind of comes back, and I'm sort of figuring out what I want to, post career. It's like, what motivates you? And like I've struggled post career, and I've been retired for almost 10 years now with like jumping out of bed in the morning, like super excited, like to, that what I've got today kind of thing. Right. And like, my entire life has been like, I know exactly what I'm supposed to do. It's tennis. It's like, it's sport. It's like, you know, you have your goals and your aspirations and like, you're excited to try and meet them. Right. And post career, and a lot of athletes struggle with like the fact that like, what is that? How do you find that? And so for me, like a month ago or 2 months ago, I had a really bad like kind of week or a few days where, and where I was struggling anxiety wise, and actually had to go to I went to the hospital like once, and uh, Andy's texted me, and and like that's the thing. You have your support system, and you send I'll send a funny, kind of text out to my buddies. And next thing you know, I get a text from Andy like, "Hey, dude, are you okay?" And it's like, it's really important to have a support system, have loved ones, and be vulnerable with loved ones. Because if I never said that, then he wouldn't have known that. And then I'm not looking for like, I want him to like feel bad for me at all. I just like, I know he cares, and I know my friends care, and I know I care, like if he was going through something like that. So like, it's important to be vulnerable too. It's like, and it's okay to be vulnerable. And like, I still maintain that it's harder to come out and say, I'm struggling with this than to not. If I don't say it, then I don't have to answer any questions about it. If Simone Biles just says, "Oh, I hurt my knee and I can't compete," it's so much easier for her to deal with in the Olympics, or Naomi, or anyone in that regard. They don't have to bring it up, and you feel better talking about it. You feel more open talking about it. You feel more vulnerable talking about it, and you have to be that way. Um, because it can be just as simple as like a text saying, hey, buddy, how you doing? Are you okay?" And that's all you needed that day. And people just don't embrace it, don't understand it. And I would say to, first of all, like, I don't know how everyone doesn't struggle with some sort of mental health issue, whether they get depressed or they get anxious or they get, I don't know if anyone ever, everyone has ever had like a panic attack. Those are pretty brutal. It seems like, for the most part, most people have, oh, I had one in the airport one time or whatever. But like, um, everyone's been depressed, everyone's been anxious in their life, and like it's just kind of how you figure it out, how you deal with it. Do you bottle it up and keep it internally? Some people can. Like some people can handle an insane amount of stress, and and just go all the time. And some people can't. And it's not a weakness because you can't. You're just wired a little differently.
Marty, talk to me about, because on the front end of this episode, John and I were just going through kind of the catalyst for this conversation this time, right? And it basically, he ran through a bunch of players that have either talked about it, taken time off. Alcaraz talks about it, last week. And, he's like, I don't know that I've ever seen someone so young be so honest about everything. Like he's he loses in Indian Wells and he's like, I just felt nervous all day and I don't know why. He doesn't hide.
It's a great trait. It's a great trait to have.
But also I don't think this, we come out the way we come out. I don't think he does this 10 years ago. I think he's the first one we're seeing of the generation where it's not taboo, or you're not like you said, 29 before it's like, okay, I'm a fucking adult. I can talk about what I'd like to talk about because it's important to me and hopefully it'll help someone. He seems like the first person who actually like talks about it in real time and doesn't actually care enough, and or the world is like a more comfortable place to say these things into. But as we see the same problems with the tours, as far as the season is only getting longer, I think, the social mediums, the gamblers who talk shit, all of the things that we both had to deal with are seemingly like getting more extended. Athletes are more accessible. The problems aren't getting better. They're getting worse. When it comes to length of season, when it comes to all these things, is there enough attention paid by the tours? Are there, should there be, or are there processes in place? Has anyone called you and say, hey, what should an infrastructure like this look like and how do we apply it? It just seems like it's something we talk about, but then in action, we add another week to the calendar and it's like, oh, it's physically demanding. It's not, it's probably more so mentally demanding. Like, I just feel like as much progress as we made, you still kind of have to pull it along. Is there anyone specific to the modern game of tennis that consistently reaches out or has implemented something for tours or players or anything? Is there some sort of ongoing thing where it feels like progress?
No, I mean, so Stacey Alistair at the USTA reached out and put something together. I think it was the year that Naomi and her French Open, I can't remember the exact year of that, but like that year.
It was 2021.
There you go. Yeah. So like that year, I was still the Davis Cup captain. And we put together a little kind of task force. I spoke with and I was, of course, like happy to do it and help and share my story, share my thoughts, everything. Right. That was like one specific year of it. Like I've never heard from, now I guess I could, be more proactive in it, I guess, and like go, hey, you guys need this. I'm willing to help, blah, blah, blah. But no, I haven't heard from them, or the tour or anything like that post that 2021. I don't know, maybe it was a Davis Cup thing or something like that. I guess they really wanted me to take that doubles player that one time, so maybe they took me out.
If you know, you know.
But yeah, that was a big deal. But yeah, I mean, it's there are so many more people, dude, that can do this too than me. I mean, there are so many people. I promise you, there are players that you and I know of very well that would be very good at this stuff, would be very helpful with other players and stuff like that. I guess we just haven't embraced it as much in tennis. You're right that the tour is long. Everyone's trying to get theirs while they can, right? It's a short career. It's not like we have no guaranteed money per se. So we're like, you're just trying to, you get an exhibition in December and you're going to do it because you got to pull the trigger on a lot of stuff, and you have to think about your career, but you also have to think about post-career and things like that and weigh the pros and cons of it. And So you can find yourself just playing like nonstop, and so there's really no breaks. And so it's the tour schedule is certainly not conducive to like your mental health, like trying to, stay on the road. We get a couple, you have a few tournaments here, and then you're gonna be able to have a couple weeks off or something like that. Or here's and maybe they do have, a number of someone that you can just sort of call and be a confidant or whatever.
But
I
that's
would
like,
be.
but that's like a lazy thing. Like just to say, call this number of this random person to tell them your innermost secrets. Like that's kind of like a fake effort, isn't it? Or am I wrong
I
on
would
that?
think, yeah. I mean, but like I would be happy to be that human. Like, but my point is like no one's reached out to me other than that one time. Stacey Allister did a great job of like trying to make it an initiative. I don't know what happened post that, but yeah, I mean, it would be beneficial for sure if they had help. What is that help, dude? Like, I don't know how that structure is. Maybe that's where the disconnect is, right? Where it's like, all right, we have these like psychiatrists that we have on staff, and they know the ins and outs of anxiety or panic or depression or whatever, and they can point you in the right direction, or they can give you thoughts and ideas and stuff like that. But no, I mean, no one's reached out and gone, hey, like, what do you think about this? What should we do here? Or that, or this and that. And I don't know if I even have the answers, dude. Honestly,
Yeah,
like I just,
but what you like what you know is important. What you're positive like you don't know is equally as important when you're talking about these things. Like your lived experience is more important than my guess. Right. Like it just is like, I'm guessing I would be like, oh, I don't know. I fucking think this. So like you as a resource, like you can talk it off the ledge as much as you want, but it would be an obvious step. One other thing as you're going through this, and we've taken up too much of your time, and I'm sure you have like an ass kicking scheduled for this afternoon. But as you're talking through that, I'm going, okay, that is hard because you have hundreds of people speaking, a bunch of different languages, and they're spread across Earth for different moments in time. It's not as if you have someone on staff of a football team and you're always together, or on staff at a basketball team and you're always together. And there's like this, intimacy of profession where you can, the best moments of our careers happen because someone farted in a locker room or because someone said something at a dinner and we're cut up about it. So there isn't that shared experience with someone else. You said tennis is the hardest sport on earth, and I absolutely agree. Is it even harder from a mental health perspective, not on an individual? Because I know you said we don't, tennis doesn't own the challenging space of anxiety or mental health, but does it ask the toughest questions of any sport when you're going through it? Obviously MMA, you could someone could kill you. So maybe that's a differentiator, but is it really hard? I can sit here and say, well, there should be something organized, but is it especially hard in tennis because of the challenges, the global nature, how everything kind of exists in a silo? We have our own teams and we kind of cocoon ourselves and we all do our own thing. Is it the most challenging in tennis as far as setting up like a responsible infrastructure and actually doing it correctly?
yeah, because I think like every sport, you have to be great at your craft, right? Got to be good. Got to be good at hitting a baseball. You got to be good at hitting a golf ball, whatever. Pretty much every sport is, I should say every sport is, man, you got to be mentally tough, right? Let's just say you baseball, you're a hitter and you go 0 for 13 and you're all just in your head, right? So it's a mentally, just a brutal. Golf, brutal. Tennis, you're all by yourself, one on one. You don't have to beat the whole draw, but you got to beat that one person and try and figure it out. What's your body like? How do you feel? How far do you push your body? Like the physical side of tennis, I think is the differentiator. And yes, well, there are, you're a marathon runner. You leave the locker room, you're all by yourself. You're just out there running, right? Like I'm talking like major sport, and we can throw MMA in there, I guess, where, you can push your body. I just found as I got like later in my career and I got a little bit fitter and understanding of like, the importance of being able to run forever, is that like you can push your body so much further than you think it can go. However, not everybody knows that. And you only know that if you're in the moment, if you're in the fire, if you're in the fight. And I learned that, at a later part of my career, but the part where like tennis, look at all these other sports, certainly team sports, guaranteed money. I don't know how that would work, like in my mind, right? It's just like, I'm gonna go out there and play this match today. I'm gonna make the same amount of money whether I win or lose. So why am I going to push my body like that much further, like, to basically the depths of like, okay, I can't go anymore. Now I have to go an extra 10%. Oh, and by the way, we're in Atlanta in July, right? Like, and try and figure that out.
I
We're
saw
outside on
I
concrete.
saw two pitchers yesterday pull themselves from the game because they had a cramp in their leg after pitching 4 innings indoors.
I mean, yeah, general fatigue is a good one. Yeah, that mindset, like NBA, like I got a couple buddies in the NBA that like, and it's just they can play. Load management, things like this. It's just crazy. And we talk about it. I talk about it with them like all the time. I just don't understand it. I don't get it because it's not in our mind. It's not a tennis player's mindset where it's like, oh yeah, we can just, call a tee or call a timeout or get, let's pull Andy in. We can talk about basketball if you want to, high school basketball. John, no one asked me about high school basketball. Andy's high school. Um, but like what's the motivation, right? Like what are you're still going to do the exact same things, and that's where the Kobe Bryants and the Michael Jordans and the Steph Currys and these guys are so rare, right? Like they always show Kevin Garnett's, they always show up, regardless of whether they know that they're making extra money or not, and they're not. Like it's the same type of thing. If money is your motivation, and money is a lot of people's motivation, and that's okay. Whatever your motivation is to grind. Dustin Johnson, like I used to play some golf with him, and like his motivation was financial, and like he just that's awesome. But like find your why, and tennis is like finding your Y, X, Z, W, whatever. Like find all of it in one thing.
NBA in Tashkent next week, by the way.
And yeah, and just, I mean, dude, the time zones. I mean, that was back when I was taking Ambien. By the way, do not take Ambien. Whoever's taking Ambien out there, stop taking Ambien. I used to take Ambien like almost, not almost every night. And like we'd have, I mean, Dubai, dude, Dubai is a 12-hour time difference than Los Angeles. So if it's 4 a.m. here, it's 4 p.m. there and we're playing. And it's like you're playing at 3 p.m. over there, but it's your body thinks it's 3 a.m. and you got to try and sleep and figure it out. It's just a nightmare. And that 2012 year was the year that sort of it all kind of came crashing down. But it was an interesting year for me where I was sort of reaping a lot of the benefits financially of like the 2 years prior. This is Andy doesn't worry about this because he was reaping those in like 2003 to, whatever. Took me a little bit longer. And so you're saying yes to a lot of things though, right, Andy? Like I'm saying yes to Hopman Cup. Well, when I went to the World Tour final for the only time in my career, and my last match was against Federer on Thanksgiving, and then I leave before the New Year to go to Perth, Australia, which is on the other side of the world, and then I go Perth, home, Davis Cup in Switzerland, home, Indian Wells, Miami, Europe, Clay, Davis Cup, Monte Carlo, like and it's like, and it's not even April. So it's like it's a really brutal game. I'm pushing my son more into golf and baseball than tennis. I don't know what you're doing with Hank, but
I mean, I would do that too because I remember what your son's golf swing looked like when he was 3. So therefore,
those are a good golf swing.
I,
Yeah,
it's so clean. It's so clean.
Awesome.
I would do terrible things for his golf swing. Listen, Marty, we have a lot of history. So sometimes it's hard for me to kind of like compartmentalize your journey and separate it from like shenanigans. Right. But, you haven't watched it. I hope you do at some point. I'm so proud of you. I really am. I'm so proud of you. And I wouldn't have imagined, and I mean this lovingly, I wouldn't imagine your impact on Earth with what you've shared when you were 19 years old. I just wouldn't have. And where you've come, what you've done, how open you've been. I love you. I just couldn't be prouder. Thank you for sharing. I think you were the first through the door when it wasn't an open door. And I think you're largely responsible for, even if he doesn't know it, Carlos sitting in a room and just saying, you know what? I've thought about taking it off too. And I'll beat your ass today. Like, those can live in the same sentence. I think that's largely because of you. I'm probably biased. But I do think it. I don't need you to respond to that or confirm it. I think it. You should know it, at least in some small part. I hope you keep doing what you're doing. I hope tennis as a resource. I think it's a fucking criminal act that they're not picking your brain all the time and at least using your experience at minimum to create a familiar voice and face and someone that can relate. We can not talk for a couple months at a time and fall back in because we have this shared experience. Tennis players understand other tennis players. And I hope that you continue to have the bandwidth to be there for others like you have been for, the better part of the last decade now. Gosh, it's weird to say how time goes on and this thing comes out and your lived experience. I've seen you, I've moderated conversations where you and Phelps have gone and said to the biggest world leaders and walked them through their journey. And I see these Uber CEOs, these guys that are like, the pinnacle of the mountain nodding along with their story like that. I understand, and everyone can kind of equate it to their life. So I appreciate you coming on. More importantly, I appreciate who you are, what you've become, and, all that good stuff, Marty.
Thank you for having me, dude. I love you like a brother, as you know, and we'll see you on the golf course in May.
Oh, got a big showdown, guys. We have a golf trip with me, Isner, and James.
Ooh.
And Isner and James have talked so much shit, but Isner's scared to bet like $5. Like, he'll chirp, and then we'll just disengage when it comes to actually putting up.
He wants like an extra stroke or something.
Yeah, he's like,
Isner needs to step up. He needs to step up and play that and just play that. He has said it multiple times. I can beat you. So James is like, all right, put your money where your mouth is. And like, he won't put his money where his mouth is.
No.
So he's got to step up and do it. But yeah, we can't. The issue is like you and I, like we were a really good doubles team, but then like we're brothers in the sense of like, we love each other, but we also want to compete against everything against each other. So like you're on the other team. So there you go.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, no. Because God, I know where this is going to go. It's going to be you and James. And I'm going to be stuck with Isner just in a panic all day.
Stuck with him.
That doesn't sound fun to me.
I got fished by submission.
Well, you guys are. You and I are the best. We can't be on the same.
James
team.
and I. He says we're the same right now. Like, I don't know what to say. Like, it's just
maybe set up a game with you and him then too while we're at it.
I could play a match for however much prize money, and if I have to make a putt for $6 in shame in front of 3 people, I'll miss it, guaranteed. But I guess that's the way our minds work sometimes. Fishy, I'll see you soon. Love you, brother. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah.
Thanks,
see you guys. Thanks for having me, dude.
Thanks, Marty.
As we thought, it's like sports are fucking hard. And then when something's going on and you're having to like outperform Earth with something going on, it's just, that's not less than mentally, that's more than mentally, right? Like, I don't know. I love that Marty came on. I love that he's kind of taken on this leadership role of, I'll talk about it. I'll talk about it anytime because someone might be listening. Like, I just think it's cool. And it's, I'm proud because he's a friend of mine. JW, how much have you talked to Marty much about? I know you guys like text about like bloody noses and shit.
It's more about who's submitting who and what UFC card. But yeah, I mean, I'm just really struck that he said he didn't have an archetype. He didn't have an athlete that he could look up to that went through, and he didn't have someone he could call. And now that's, if this is his legacy ultimately, apart from being a top 10 tennis player and Davis Cup success and taking matches from Roger and Rafa, his sports legacy is he's one of the pioneers here. That's really something to be proud of. And I think one thing that struck me too is he's clearly, they're not easy answers here, right? This isn't like here are my 10 tips for dealing with getting back from ACL surgery. I mean, he's clearly still wrestling with this himself at times. There are clearly issues and approaches that he's still making his way through. And I think that's sort of part of the effectiveness here. And yeah, I'm with you too. I mean, look at tennis, right? And the contracts aren't guaranteed, and you have the stress of competition, and you don't have these infrastructures. You don't have the team doctor that's going to see you every day, and you don't have the consistency of schedule. Tennis kind of needs to gird itself and needs to realize that there are a lot of factors here that overlap with tennis that would create anxiety and mental health challenges. And for them not to make use of someone like Mardy is, that's a criminal act.
Tennis doesn't create this stuff, right? It doesn't, but it has all the levers to magnify something that's there with the travel, with the mind. Like he mentioned Dubai, and I automatically went into Beavis mode where I'm like, because I thought of something funny, but it's also like brutal. I thought about arriving from Memphis to Dubai, landing at 3 a.m. I had to play the next night. Who knows? You're in a time zone. I remember being in a full slumber under a table in the players' lounge. Like I put my bag down, and my coach or my brother, Dougie, who kicked me, nudged me with their foot and was like, "You're on." And I went and played Ferrero, first round of Dubai, who was a former number one. And I mean, weirdly, there's no rhyme or reason. I had one of the best weeks in my career.
That's crazy.
But it's just what we did, and it's psychotic.
Well, he was talking, we talked a lot about MMA, right? And I worked in MMA for a while, and these fighters will train for months at the exact hour they're supposed to walk, right? If they're fighting in Dubai and they're in Vegas, these guys will be training in the middle of the night. And it's just they do it for months to be able to get their body prepped for this thing that's out of the norm. And you're asked to do it every month. Well, across the globe, back and forth, nonstop for an entire career. That's crazy.
That's before we deal. We haven't talked about you go to Australia and all of a sudden you have to be ready to go if you want to win a Grand Slam. Not saying this is going to happen every day, but in your mind, it's okay, I got to be able to go 5.5 hours every day. We played matches the old surface in Australia. Imagine getting mentally ready to go out. I remember feeling sick about this. It'd be a day where the on-court temps were 140 degrees, right? So just sun baking off heat, baking off of stands. You're basically in an oven. And it used to be played on this rubber surface called Rebound Ace, right? John will probably remember it. But on really hot days, it smelled like burning tires, okay? So you would walk.
It was burning tires.
Yeah. Well,
basically what it was.
So gross. But the entrance to the center court in Australia, you would walk down 6 steps, but then you'd have to walk back up. So you'd be walking basically with the slope of the stands, but underneath in the tunnel. And then you would walk up 3 steps. But while they were introing you, you were basically eye level. So me looking at you right now, but with the court. And you would see those desert mirage water waves.
Just the heat waves.
And then you could smell it. And you're I'm going to go out here and do this for 6 hours, potentially right now.
That's insane.
And it was the mental hurdle of and now from America, Andy Roddick, and you're ugh.
Yeah, the traditional coach is 40 minutes is the rest of your life. You're 6 hours? Maybe?
Yeah. But it's just, I say this not to, it's not self-congratulatory. It's just to say, in my opinion, bias is all included. Tennis is the hardest sport in the world for so many reasons. You're isolated, everything we're talking about. I see the golfers oh yeah, it's a tough road trip. I'm you went from Hawaii to the West Coast to Texas over the course of 9 weeks.
Well, and you could have a shitty round and still make the cut. And you essentially
don't get me started on celebrating.
Anyway. No, I mean, I think
wins.
the broader point here is that that doesn't mean you shouldn't play tennis, but there are a lot of factors and variables that are not consistent with optimal mental health, and tennis probably should do a better job recognize that.
All right. Well, that's that. Madrid coming up this week. I'll be on TC Live most of the days, and we will catch you next week. Thanks for watching, listening to Serve.